Hello, friend, and welcome to Daily Treasure, a devotional podcast by Sharon Betters, produced by Mark Inc. Ministries. This week, our guest writer is Patsy Kuipers. Today's devotional is called Seasons. Today's treasure: for everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. I once attended a presentation where the speaker began with, "Summer, fall, and winter are seasons. Spring is a miracle." I've thought about her comment every spring since. Early warm spells begin to nudge plants from their winter slumber in January here in the South. Witch hazel, Lenten roses, and paper bush start a floral parade that continues for multiple weeks as plants take turns in the spotlight. Trees, flowers, and baby birds all embody the joyful message of rebirth, which in turn stimulates hope and rejuvenation in us. But spring gives way to summer, and tender ephemerals disappear for another year as heat-loving specimens flourish. Summer annuals and perennials bloom, then set and disperse their seeds before beginning their decline. Fall arrives, crops are ripe for harvest, the fruit of spring planting and summer tending. Soon, daylight hours decrease, as does the temperature, and autumnal leaves create a riotous display of color. One last hurrah before they let go and blanket the ground for the winter. Ah, winter. Based on my observations, I've concluded it is the most misunderstood, underappreciated season, at least from a gardening standpoint. Those unfamiliar with the ways of plants scan the leafless, apparently lifeless landscape and pronounce, "Everything's dead." I used to think that too, but my horticulture studies dissuaded me from that notion. For instance, some seeds won't germinate without scarification. Some bulbs won't bloom without adequate chill time, and many plants depend on the decreased daylight and increased darkness that accompanies winter to flower at the appropriate time. My newfound knowledge has given me a different perspective. Now, when I contemplate winter vistas, I prefer to think of the plants as resting while building reserves for the next season of fruitfulness. Contemplating the bedraggled state of my summer annuals one early September day reminded me of a book I'd been reading. Instead of equating the aging process with seasons, as is often done, author Mark Buchanan explores what he deemed cycles in our hearts. In the book Spiritual Rhythm, Being with Jesus Every Season of Your Soul, he describes different periods in our lives in terms of the 4 seasons, each with its own set of challenges and blessings, each necessary if we're to bear fruit. The friends who gave me the book thought the analogy would resonate with me because of my love of gardening. And so it does. Year after year, I've observed and anticipated the changes as one season follows another, each dependent on the ones that precede. Sometimes I think it would be nice to live in a constant state of springtime, emotionally and spiritually speaking. Productive, energetic, surrounded by resurgent, hope-producing, joy-filled circumstances. But like the plants, God knows we need all the seasons to produce abundant fruit and to become more like Jesus. We need to slow down and be still, to rest and draw near to God in all seasons. But we're most likely to do so during the winter of our souls, times of loss and suffering. For it's then we realize our utter reliance upon God, a dependence present every moment, but most evident when we come to the end of our supposed self-sufficiency. My own winters have convinced me of the veracity of Elizabeth Elliot's declaration. The deepest things that I have learned in my own life have come from the deepest suffering. And out of the deepest waters and the hottest fires have come the deepest things that I know about God. Yet, like the trees and flowers, I've emerged able to bear more fruit because I know my Father and His ways more intimately. Signs of life return as our winters give way to another cycle of spring planting, summer tending, and fall harvesting, a cycle that will continue in us and the natural world until our final winter. Our bodies will rest in the ground, waiting for reunion with our souls when we're called home, glorified and welcomed into the joy of eternal spring. Dear Lord, just as we savor the changing of the seasons in the natural world, please help us to embrace the seasons of our souls, knowing that you have a purpose and a plan for each as the cycles of our lives continue until Jesus returns.
Well, friends, another week has gone by. It's Saturday, and as I often say, I hope that you are preparing your family to go to church tomorrow, to join with God's family in worship, hearing the Word, and connecting with one another. And as you do, I suggest that you be really sensitive to those around you. Pray before you go, and ask the Lord to show you who needs a special touch today. I am very sensitive to that because I know how many times people have reached out to me, especially when my heart was breaking, and without a word, they were able to encourage me. And so I want others to experience that same kind of encouragement. One of the ways that we offer encouragement is through the Help and Hope podcast, and this week's guest is Jackie Rose, who is the founder of Grieving Moms Finding Hope. The title of our conversation is Suicide, A Mother's Grief and Hope. Jackie Rose and I met virtually. We have not met in person, but Jackie had reached out to me and asked me to be a guest on her live Facebook page. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it because we just connected so sweetly. And so I invited Jackie to be on the Help and Hope podcast. And she was just as delightful in this conversation and so helpful and so encouraging. There is so much pain in the loss of a child, and I think that suicide probably carries its own kind of pain and darkness, and yet Jackie gives us hope. She asked the Lord to show her how to redeem the pain of her son's death, and she heard the Lord telling her, give them hope. And I know that when you listen to this conversation that we had, you will agree that that is exactly what Jackie is doing. So make sure you go to helpandhopenow.org, click the Help and Hope link, and look for my conversation with Jackie Rose. We call it Suicide, A Mother's Grief and Hope. I'm Sharon Betters, and I look forward to being with you tomorrow for week 3 of the What She Said series.